Hello and welcome back to RP-0 America. So let's take a look at where things are for tech. I just finished heavy tech, advanced construction, which probably might give me a new tank type. And now thinking about that, I should check, and we should actually add that kind of description to here, because this is a not intensely useful description. I mean, it's generic, but we could actually say, we'll unlock this tank type, things like that are useful. And it's just so I can build heavier gauge things effectively. There's some more FASA prefab parts I definitely want in here. I'd like to build the FASA prefab Saturn V because it looks cool. And other important techs I'd like miniaturization, which will let me send real probes to other planets rather than kind of being a cheater like I've done in many missions, and land, which will lead me to landing. Notice you need miniaturization for that because I'm going to want landing legs, and being able to build the satellite buses, just having this avionics for other things is going to be super useful. Awesome, cool. There's this, which might end up being useful. I don't know. Should try scaling that up and trying that on Mars missions. So there's kind of early low-hanging stuff. Like obviously, I'm not doing airplane stuff. So mature solids, that's bigger than the biggest booster I currently have, but I don't really want to use it as a booster. I might end up considering it later. We will see, because it's not a super expensive tech. Stage combustion has some great engines. It has this, which has 50% more thrust per engine than my current, the H1, my current biggest engine, but it's a Soviet engine, and I'm going, RP-0 America. So that's why I'm not really going down the staged combustion path, which doesn't have a lot of parts, but they're Russian parts, and in part, the reason it doesn't have a lot of parts is because I don't have mods for Russian stuff installed right now. So what I'm really going to be heading towards is heavy orbital rocketry will give me this to get, which will F1 Saturn V engine, very big and awesome, will actually help me to get off the ground, and then various sized hypergolic engines, which will be useful, and some of which are throttleable, which will be very useful for whatever lander I use for landing humans on the moon. Also a very nice, useful engine. So that's the kind of engine path I need to head down. That will take some time to research those. I did invest some research points in, invest some upgrade points in research, so this is a bit faster than it might have been last time you saw those numbers. But miniaturization we'll have done in about half a year, which will eventually let us move towards landing, but really then beefy, I want heavy orbital rocketry. I may as well just cancel, stop, just because it's not key to what we're heading towards. I mean, that tech that I just canceled will be useful for our later missions past low Earth orbit and basic lunar landings, but it's not critical to our current path. Before I jump here, well, everything's loading at a good speed, which is nice. Okay, tech. So VAB. So we're building Lunar Gemini Lunar A, which I don't recall if I showed some construction of. I apologize if I didn't. Either way, I'm Canadian, so apologies all around. That's still in construction. That's my Saturn 1, which will be throwing a Gemini at mostly Saturn 1 with a Centaur upper stage to throw Gemini in a lunar flyby, which will be awesome, which will be in a future upcoming episode, since it's all designed and everything and ready to go. So Lunar Orb, I built that, and I did that because, let me just make sure I don't already have the contract. Because I saw a contract which totally is doable. Uncrewed Lunar Orbit. So look at the cash there. I haven't even accepted it, and it's going to give me a ton of money for accomplishing it. And it's really not a really difficult mission. Let's see, collect science. Let's make sure I didn't screw up. Experiment any, recover or transmit. So I'll need to make sure it has an antenna, because I forget that kind of thing sometimes. Don't have people get into orbit of the moon. Totally accomplishable. So I'm going to take that contract. If you see any other contracts in here that look eminently doable and potentially profitable, can I just know? I was kind of wishing I could just hit up and down arrows in order to just flash through all these so people could see all these contracts, but I'm just going to quickly click through them all. So if you want to pause and take a look at all the contracts I have available, but really to be meaningful to me, it has to be worth like $100,000. That one's a bit tricky, Phobos, because it's a moon of Mars. So not only do I have to kind of throw something at Mars, but I have to throw it accurately enough that it's actually going to be in Phobos' sphere of influence, which I might do once I have better satellite or better avionics tech, because that's a cool challenge. Considering these flybys, Nathan Kell already did them. Like, that's in part, this is how he funds what he ends up doing. Because once you have a medium throw rocket and kind of some of your earlier stuff, it takes more delta V to throw at Jupiter or Saturn and stuff. But you can throw a small probe at those planets fairly readily, and they give you tons of cash. It's just ahistorical, which is why I didn't go that way. That's how he advances tech so fast, I believe. These ones are kind of weird to me. I'm not sure if they're still supposed to be around. That one actually might give a good bit of cash, so I'll have to look into that. 2 Kerbals. Yeah, I'll have to look into that one. That one might be worth some cash, particularly with what I'm moving towards building. Let's see, uncrewed Mars landing. That's very tricksy, but I might try something like that. Jeez, land on a moon of Mars. I don't know. Hasn't even been, as far as I know, this hasn't been done in reality. Let me know if I'm wrong. Lunar flyby, that's totally where, look at all the sweet cash I'll get there. I haven't even accepted it. But I'm ready to do that one now. And that'll give me lots of juicy, wow. Okay, so this is more cash, but not much more cash than Lunar flyby. I feel like there should be Lunar Orbital somewhere in the middle there, because I'm kind of abusing this, I feel, in a way, because there's the flyby, which gives you tons of cash, and then I'm going to advance towards landing, but not with really any middle attempts for just something that's just capable of orbit. Once I throw something at the moon, it should be capable of also landing. I might do tests beforehand. I'm not actually landing it, but the hardware itself should be capable of landing. Lunar Impactor. So this is an easy cash mission. I could just keep looping. Anyway, so I've shown you enough of the background of things. What things are accomplishable. Yeah, a Mars probe I'm interested in doing, but I think I'll have to wait until I have some better tech. Like this miniaturization might help me to imagine that. But anyway, I've got Lunar Orbiter, I've numbered it, ready to go. And so let us do that, because that's going to be some good straight cash. I don't recall if I've sent a probe explicitly just to lunar orbit yet. Like I've done some landing and like maybe my very first lunar orbiter, but nothing for any of these later contracts that's a bit more capable or heavy. Like at this point in career things, there's still lots of firsts to accomplish. They just become kind of more stacked and more complex with time. And then you're kind of doing second generation contracts like this, where it's something you've done, but you're doing it in a much more impressive manner. Like you're sending something heavier or more capable to do the mission than you did the very first time, where it was like, this is barely accomplishable, or kind of first time this can be accomplished. All right, set moon as target. Just take a look at some data. Right, and relative inclination. So we're near a launch time. All right, so it looks like we're gonna have to warp around a whole day. We missed that relative. We're moving away from the kind of the one time of day where Cape Canaveral here gets to throw something at the moon. So we're going to flip around in time and go to the there we go. I warped past it. Well, that's just me being awesome. All right, let's do it again. Let's leave this on the pad for a while. Yeah, I did some discussion with Nathan Kell. Like, he's obviously moving way faster than I am in my career, because he puts time in, like a lot of time in every single day, or at least weekday. I haven't checked if he's keeps up his release cadence on every weekend day as well. But he's going to kind of aim towards the moon and maybe more advanced moon missions, whereas my goals are explicitly towards Mars. Obviously, for mission reasons, for cash reasons, we're going to put people on the surface of the moon and safely return them to Earth. But that's not... My end goal isn't to, say, make a moon colony or do substantial cool things on the moon that were not historically done. Once I've accomplished the basic lunar landing goals, I intend to, at the very least, throw people past Mars. I want to do something that I haven't done yet, that hasn't historically been done, something that I find challenging. And Thason and some other people on the Realism Overhaul channel pointed me towards Shimmy, the JJ, and other people who've used KSP TOT, a planning tool, which would be super awesome to be able to use. All right, so we're in the plane, which will help me to do flybys of it's a planning tool that will let you do help you and suggest you to do more. Let's see, keep you complicated missions, like a flyby of Mars and then return to Earth with no or minimal delta V to do so. And yeah, that tool just is super kind of super opaque to me. Like, I just couldn't quite figure it out. But even just seeing Shimmy having some trouble with it and then still making some progress, he opened up windows I've never seen before. Like, he did some stuff in right-clicking menus I wasn't even aware there were options in right-click. So thanks to Thace and other people for pointing me that way. That should help me to accomplish my goals of complex Mars missions. Let's see, at least one person on the KSP RO, maybe Shabs, I'm not sure, has called me weak or lame, or not with those specific words, but that my goals are too low, or like, no, if you're gonna send people to Mars, you may as well do a landing. But I don't agree. I've tried to do Mars landings with people many times and failed, or at least it feels that way. It's been like almost a year maybe since my most recent attempt to do so. So, maybe my memory is failing in that regard. But I've even in many things, like, once you fail to do something, it shouldn't stop you from doing it if you're still interested in doing it, but it has caused me to rethink the route I'm using to do the things. This kind of looks like a short stout rocket now compared to some of the other stuff. Like, this is a custom designed tank. This is before we had the Titan II. I used two H1 engines to kind of develop the H1 engine. It's an oldie but a goodie, an old launcher of ours. So we're starting to wander off of relative inclination, so I'm just going to fiddle with the yaw. Oh, there we go, good. So we are now keeping that down. We just want to be vaguely, right. So this angle, it's weird. I don't even want to try to explain. Like, if we were down at the bottom, 1 degree would be 1 degree, but up here, 1 degree of this is more than 1 degree because we're close to straight up. It's complicated. Reference frame transforms. Oh, and now we're wandering past. Just being within a couple degrees will be good enough. We're not aiming for a specific moon orbit, as at least I'm pretty sure that contract wasn't. It was almost kind of like a world first type thing where it's just do the generic version of this, which I can totally do, I believe. Okay, let's pitch down. Not too dangerous to let it just womp like that because our dynamic pressure has come down. As Mekjeb very energetically tried to achieve the goal I had set for it, and thankfully didn't swing intensely past it. These are pretty well developed. Yeah, these are maximally efficient engines now. So they are just the first version of the H1 though. What was used for the Saturn 1. And at some point I will have to develop, I will eventually unlock the ability to have the second version of these engines, which is what we use on the Saturn 1B, or Saturn IB, never quite figure out how it's supposed to be pronounced. Okay, so let's get the next engine started. First stage is burned out, which was Keralox, and now the second stage is just a Titan II second stage, basically. And we are approaching, I turned on God Rays just to see if they made anything look better or not, and not quite the same. I might also end up with some time in the next week or a couple weeks to improve the visuals. Like, people clearly like the visuals, and I appreciate feedback you provide, that I'm using RVE and it looks all nice and things without too many apparent crazy bugs. But I would like, are we high enough yet? Yeah, high enough, 92. I would like to at least get cloud shadows. And again, I think Thason and other people have pointed me towards other RVE configs, which will give me cloud shadows on the ground, which will make the cloud cover look even better, as well as potentially better looking ground textures. Is it Phineas Freaks? Here, let me check the GitHub repo that I was linked to. Who actually made that? I did open the link. Yeah, it's Phineas Freak. RSSVE. It's a mouthful. You can look him up on GitHub if you're curious of that. But we'll potentially have some cool configs and options where I can make these beautification mods look even nicer. I've been kind of haven't had the time to really be part of the RO community in the last couple of months, unfortunately, but they've made some awesome progress without me, of course, as they always do. And I look forward to making use of it and potentially helping to organize and make RSS VE even better, because I'm sure there's some tricks I've used in my custom configs that may not be in there yet, or I can provide some feedback at the very least, or even just if it seems stable enough. Well, who knows? But maybe I'd make instructions on how to install it, or a video where I show me installing it. But I think we're moving towards within the next few weeks. For all I know, we might have the next version of KSP. So that's just always the cycle, isn't it? Eventually, the visual mods become awesome, and it kind of starts to become potentially approachable for the average KSP player to install them. And then all of a sudden, KSP updates again, because darn those people for spending all the money, what little money we've given them, the actual KSP dev team, and they just keep advancing the state of the art of the KSP itself. I know I haven't paid KSP squad team in a long time. I bought this game many years ago now, and I've by far gotten more than my $20 or $25 worth. I don't even know what the game costs now, but I definitely got my money's worth and more for what I paid. But to be fair, I have convinced a number of friends to buy the game and play the game and whatnot, and I'm sure, I hope at least, some people will watch the videos I'm making and say, oh man, that game looks cool, you can do cool things in it, and hopefully that at least helps push other people towards buying the game as well. Because the squad team totally deserves our financial support for this awesome game. Alright, so we are approaching orbit, or at least approaching burnout of this stage. It's not a perfectly developed engine, as you can see there. Approaching 5,000 DUs now. Oh, mean time between failure is rapidly rising. Yeah, I think I made this stage too big for this engine or something like that, but thankfully the Agathorn's test flight gods have been merciful to me. So we haven't quite reached orbit yet, so let's just continue this launch on. Alright, let's dump that. Is this engine ullage stable? Ooh, it looks like it's a version that may not require ullage. I don't know. Alright, but anyway, let's light it up, and let's complete this orbit. Man, I don't know what it is. Maybe something about how I build my craft or stage them or something recently, but I just love to see those lower stages kind of flip away or gradually spin away. So a lot of the older craft I remember flying, the lower stages just move away directly behind you, and they didn't quite look as real, but they're kind of free floating because they're no longer thrusting, and also they are imparted force by the thrust now, I think, which causes them to spin off like that, which looks super cool. I really, one of my favorite versions of that, I should probably be pitched up at least to 0, is on the Saturn V, the interstage ring between the first and second stage. When it flips off, if you hit it with a bit of asymmetric exhaust, it picks up a roll, or it starts to spin, as it does in the actual Saturn V videos of that staging operation, which looks super awesome and iconic. Man, this game looks great. There's that weird glitch when it transitions altitudes, but it's I don't know. That might be worked out at some point. I don't remember exactly how or when it started occurring. Definitely don't know how to fix it, but good enough. So yeah, this is really, if you look at this craft, I'm sure I've launched it before, which is a part why I didn't show the construction. It is just that first stage that I made before I even had the Titan II, and second stage is just Titan II upper stage when I had that tech, and this is just an Agena, really an Agena D, with a nice engine that didn't even require ullage, lots of ignitions, and what else? Yeah, we do definitely have an antenna, which is awesome, because we're going to need to transmit science. That is part of the requirements of the contract we've accepted. Ooh, I've lost my relative inclination information because I clicked too much. Oof, within 2 degrees. I'm now starting to wander off a bit. Let me quickly see if I can reduce that. Nope, that is the wrong direction. Let's quickly see if I can reduce that relative inclination before we hit orbit. A little bit. A little bit. It's obviously I'm wasting delta V. This isn't the most efficient way of doing it, but Hey, impromptu solution to the problem I just realized I had. Not so bad. All right, and nearly in orbit. There we go, good enough. And yeah, this is like also just pretty much the standard probe I've thrown at planets before. It's got lots of delta V, and it's awesome. I might have upgraded like the engine versions, things like that. It burn in hydrazine. I don't think it has full. No, it's this that doesn't have full hydrazine tanks. I figure there was enough delta V in my first second in this stage. In order to throw even with this probe full of hydrazine. So it has lots of delta V, which should be enough to capture around the moon just on its own. So I really didn't have to design anything new, which is the way I like my Realism Overhaul RP-0 designs to be, where I don't have to redesign things at all. Or like once in a while I might upgrade the engine version, like the engine on this, for example. But I don't have to like stretch tanks or anything like that, really. Like I can be I could do stretches like that. That is certainly a historical thing. Like later versions of the Titan II had stretched engines, and things like that. There are definitely stage stretches, or the Atlas engine, or sorry, the Atlas stage also went through many stretches, like for later Aeginas and for Centaur. But I don't need to do that, which is how I like my designs for these things, because my payloads are similar enough masses to old payloads. Okay, so maneuver planner let us a non-advanced pass at the moon. So let's see, match plane, home and transfer to target. Create node. I usually do this by hand, but this looks like it's doing plenty good enough. It's going to get me into encounter within 3 days, or a little 3.5 days, so that's good enough for me. I really like how it's showing the time under there now. I'm not sure exactly when that was added. Probably Agathorn and Nathan Keller to be thanked for that. Not sure if anybody else is, but love that it's showing the date, time, etc. For that as well. Okay, so we're going to be throwing at the moon. We've got enough delta V left in this stage for that. I was doing some testing. Obviously, you could, if you're not aware, in MechJeb it will show you. Oh, sorry, I'm just trying to get my recording screen back there just so I can see how long I've been recording for. So it was showing moon data, and it was because I was testing some later hardware, because Schaub's has made a beautiful Gemini Direct lander, which is, I think, a number of people suggested that would be a cool way for me to land people on the moon, and that is kind of where I'm headed. Oh, I kind of want to uninstall persistent rotation because I'm not smart enough to figure out how to selectively disable its features. Enable SAS to use this mode. Well, no. Relative rotation, deactivate. Oh, there we go. That might do what I want it to do. Because I saw Nathan Kell had both of these red in one of his videos, maybe the video he was making last night. And so I just want to see if that will do what I want it to do. Oh, good, it did. Okay, so maybe I want to uninstall persistent rotation, because that's the feature I wanted that it used to have as default, and now it's still an option. I just hadn't figured out exactly how to kick it in. Sorry, back to what I was saying. So I was testing out Schaub's amazing craft for a Gemini Direct landing, so you'll see that craft later, but I was testing it out to make sure it functioned, that I knew how to make it function. It was a little lighter than I'd expect it to be, and I haven't dug into it. Like, I'm not saying that he's kind of done anything incorrect in that at all. It was just lighter than I expected it to be, and so I need to do a little more analysis to figure out where he got mass savings where we wouldn't necessarily have expected there to be mass savings, because it's about a 30-ton payload, a 32-ton payload that has to be thrown to TLI towards the moon, whereas kind of I expected it to have to be at least 35, 40 tons, and Nathan Kelly said, yeah, it should be about 40 tons, even if you're using cryogenic stages, which it's not. So that could be his memory being faulty, or just, if we're, our memories are from like early NASA papers, which turned out to not actually end up being accurate, because not every paper NASA ever made was at the state of the art, or is still state of the art. So we could be remembering rough numbers, and Schaub's could be actually way, way better. But yeah, I might find something where he's done something a little suspect that I wouldn't necessarily do. So regardless, whatever I end up launching, that 32-ton payload at the moon, when I get the tech and hardware to do that, will probably be a Saturn V or pretty close to a Saturn V, which can throw a lot more than 30 tons of the moon. So that's why I'm willing to see if I can actually make it more heavy than it currently is, or maybe add another payload. Maybe the Saturn V will throw more than just Gemini direct at the moon if it has the capacity to realistically do so. All right. So we are flying over beautiful parts of the Earth that I don't currently recognize. Given how far we are after launch, I'm going to guess this is Africa for the first time. This is so bright. I definitely need to go over my scatterer and other configs. I might end up carving some time out today if I don't just decide to go back to work, do more work on. It's currently Sunday for me, but I think I'll be posting this soon, so that shouldn't be a surprise to people. But I might get pulled back into doing work anyway today. Work, obviously not this. Oh man, it's so beautiful. I can't wait until I actually use the RSSVE stuff and other cool options to make everything look even more pretty. Alright, so anyway, I don't need to slowly time warp to where I want to go. We're about 40 minutes away. I'm going to do a quick save because in some of my testing I was finding that Agathorn has reported this problem a lot, used to report it very often, where you tell MechJeb, so think through the logic right now. So we are 40 minutes away from the burn. It's estimating this burn time, which is inaccurate, obviously. I don't know why, but it's consistently giving a way longer of a burn time than it will actually need. But anyway, it can even estimating that burn time, which isn't insanely inaccurate, it should wait to do that burn if I tell it to execute next node. But it was doing cool things where it would make sure the engine would do a quick burst of ullage, get ready to go, and it would start the node now, right after I tell it to execute node. So I quick saved in case it actually does that. Good, no, it's warping. It checked, are we pointed the way we want to be pointed? Yes, we definitely are. Awesome. And then it is warping to the burn time, to the burn point. Here's how it's going to bracket that burn time. Nicely, this is an engine that doesn't need ullage, so I can be pretty relaxed about whatever it ends up doing. Because even if it doesn't try to ullage my engine, right now it's giving me the option to do so. Like we've popped out of warp before the burn, and so I would have the option to ullage. But it doesn't look like it tried to do a pulsed ullage. It looks like it's going to bracket the time closer than this estimate says. So this estimated burn is perhaps being reported by KSP and not by MechJeb. It looks like MechJeb is calculating its own number because that bracket seemed way more accurate than what this would suggest. Say burning 45 seconds before, so that's 45 seconds times 2, 90-second burn, which this will probably be shorter than a 90-second burn, but that's just me doing a really lazy half and half estimation, of course. In practice, as I've said a number of times probably in the previous videos, if it does the burn 45 seconds before the node, so it's going to be 45 seconds before the node, but probably shorter than 45 seconds after the node, because to get the same amount of velocity change before node and after node, which is the optimal version of bracketing, because the acceleration force is increasing, it's going to take less than 45 seconds of after node burn time in order to complete. Actually, I'll keep an eye on that. Again, one of the reasons I love to record these things is if I want to see something or test something or check something after or way after I make a recording, it's pretty straightforward to do so. I can just go look back at my video, look at the numbers. That's in part why I like to have all these nice fancy windows up. Even though I may not need all this information at the moment, it's very nice and useful to have it later on. To go back and make other realizations about the mission that I carried out. So this is a pretty small throw rocket, like the mass I was just talking about, right? I need to throw 30-some tons towards the moon in order to land people on the moon. And this is nowhere close to that. And bam, node and MechJeb did a beautiful job. Thank you again, Sarbian and MechJeb. So I'm holding N. Sorry, you don't see it in that view, but I'm holding N. Actually, maybe you don't see it because it doesn't affect any of these numbers. It's a translation. Ooh. Oh right, this version of Myagena doesn't have thrust backwards on this. Okay. So it is currently using probe fuel, but because this isn't a low margin mission, I don't think I'm okay with it using RCS from up here in order to do this, even though it's also slowing down this, because I wouldn't mind crashing my transfer vehicle into the moon, because that might actually also give me the ability to get more cash. Oh, no, maybe not. I didn't take that contract beforehand. But regardless, it's nice to crash your transfer vehicles into the moon, because it means less things to convert into junk later. Okay, so I've set it to crash into the moon, and so let us separate now. Separate from this transfer vehicle, the mid-age Aegina we have, and just a little puff away, which will translate into a massive distance between us over the next 3 or 4 days. And now I want to not crash into the moon with this probe, so now that I've set it to a low periapsis, a relatively low periapsis, I'll have to check the contract before we get closer. It looks like it's going to be kind of a polar orbit of the moon, which isn't bad. Not bad at all. And let's see. Yeah, we're not in, so circularize at next periapsis. Let's see if it'll actually detect this one, and no, it doesn't appear to have done so, but that's okay. I was just curious. I'm not even within that sphere of influence, but I can click here. We're going to be flying past the moon, so how much delta V will it take us to circularize the orbit? Yeah, see, way less than we have left in this probe here, so it's by no stretch of the imagination a low margin mission, which is just a more relaxed mission to carry out, you know? I like that. So let's see, extend. This isn't a science-heavy probe, though. Ooh, it's really not a science. Oh, there we go. there are science elements aboard this craft. So let's just grab experiment, even though there's no science. Temperatures, yeah, there's no science from these modules at our current altitude, and I think if there was, all the science mods we have would tell us that. Yes, we have launched. Cool. So what contracts do we have to carry out before I end this video, because we're around the 30-minute mark? Crew duration, no people, none of that. Just this. Wow, I really have kept it clean, haven't I? There's just this one mission to be carried out. Oh, and apologies for the video being, everything being darkly lit, but now it should be more nicely lit. So we're sending 300 kilograms to the moon. So the launcher we have is brilliant. It lets us do awesome probe missions towards the moon, Mars, Venus, etc. But when you compare it to the needs of a crewed lunar mission, this launcher is a nothing. Absolutely a nothing. It's not even throwing 1 ton towards the moon, let alone 30. So we're going to have to build some seriously big vehicles. I was fiddling with a multi-body Saturn 1, which, if you're not aware what that concept is, so I've got the Saturn 1 first stage with 8 H1 engines. So imagine that being like a Falcon Heavy, also if you don't know what that is. So it's a core stage with those 8 engines, and then 2 more of those first stages strapped to the sides. So as kind of a makeshift heavy, without having to develop new stages or a ton of new tech, unlocking anything new, basically makes your launch vehicle 3 times as heavy as the original one is, and mostly rocketry is mass flux, so the more fuel you're throwing off the launch pad, the more rocket you're throwing off the launch pad, the more mass you're throwing into orbit. But that's still nowhere near what I would need to throw people meaningfully at the moon. So anyway, that was a really fun experiment to do. All right, so we have this craft on the way to the moon. Periapsis, oh yeah, that's going to be pretty straightforward. So yeah, we're going to achieve this in the next mission, probably pretty quickly. So thanks for watching. This has been RP-0 America. Next episode, we will complete this mission around the moon and maybe start the next one, since it shouldn't take too long to complete this mission. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.